You know what's a good way to celebrate hitting 5,000 subscribers? Oh, I don't know. Perhaps stating some rather divisive opinions that might cause all 5,000 of those said subscribers to unsubscribe. Like, for example, I think Karlach is a poorly written character. Now, how does that make you feel? Do you want to unsubscribe? And did I say that these were opinions, by the way? I meant to say facts. Please don't actually unsubscribe. Hello everybody, welcome back. As voted on by the great power of democracy, as part of our continued celebration of 5,000 subscribers, you folks wanted to hear some of my hot takes regarding Baldur's Gate 3. I picked out 3 hot takes that I hope most of you don't agree with, otherwise, well, that kind of defeats the whole point of a hot take, doesn't it? I'll present my take, then provide my reasoning backed up with some evidence, at which point you'll most likely be swayed to my side. I will warn you, however, I am taking hard stances today, in light of making sure that I step on a few toes. Now, let the record show I do genuinely believe these 3 takes. So, if you don't agree with me, well, sorry, you're wrong. Without further ado, sit back, grab yourself a slice of key lime pie with 2 Biscoff cookies, because this video will be actually a mildly not long one. It might be a medium length one. My shortest video yet, I believe. That doesn't mean you should deprive yourself of dessert, so please grab the key lime pie and sit back and relax. And thank you for 5,000 subscribers. Hot take number 1. Lae'zel is the best written character in this game. By far. I can already hear the keyboards clicking. For some, this is in fact not a hot take. But I want to highlight the end of my statement. I said she's the best written character in the game by far. It's my opinion that there is no character in this game that has as well-rounded of a story, romance, backstory, and arc as Lae'zel. Some will come close in 1 to 2 of these areas, but Lae'zel has it all. In my Lae'zel analysis, I spoke at length about how her arc involves her escaping the restraints of growing up in a strict doctrine and finding herself, her humanity, and ultimately her freedom to live her life her way. It is a very well done arc that is built really well in the early stages of Act 1, where she comes off pragmatic, harsh, and rude. We build that base to show the player who she was before she changed. As the game goes on, and especially when we hit the crash, we unravel Lae'zel's world, and she becomes lost on what or who to believe. Through Act 2, her main story doesn't have too much to it, but the romance that you've been building with Tav and her perfectly fits here, as we are the ones that show Lae'zel that different, more humane path that she's been circling, and her Act 2 romance, where she admits her love for us in such a unique way by challenging us to a fight before declaring us the source of her bruises, is just fantastic stuff. Then, when we pick up into Act 3, Lae'zel is still working to discover what being free means, and even what loving someone else means when she encounters Vlaakith, who tempts her with everything she's ever wanted: ascension. In an excellent show of character growth, she rejects this fate and sets herself on one final mission, freeing Orpheus, and by extension, freeing her people from the unknown slavery that they've been put into. After she denounces Vlaakith, she also has her Act 3 romance scene where she looks out onto the sunset with you and gives one of the best lines of the game when she says, "I used to see only black and red death. Now I see the colors in between." This line is a great summary for who she has become. It's not that she's less Githyanki, she's just more human. And our love helped her grow into that person. Her loving us was only possible because she was able to grow. I mean, need I say any more? Besides Shadowheart, there isn't another character in this game that ties so well into the main plot of the game, what with the Githyanki race being our enemy, only to find out that Orpheus, the one true prince of his people, is still alive, is also the key to our survival and is the key to creating a kinder, more diplomatic Githyanki race. And you mean to tell me that through all of this, Lae'zel, of course being a Githyanki, gets to play a big role in the entire conflict of for people. A lot of the characters also have fantastic lines, but due to Lae'zel being a Githyanki, the way her people speak is almost poetic. I cited that amazing Black and Red Death quote earlier. It makes everything that she says so interesting because it provokes us to think about what she's actually trying to say, hence the comparison to poetry. This also doubles because a lot of what she says is subtextual, meaning that the lines that she's delivering have a lot of extra depth to them. And if we're talking character arcs, truly, no one has a better and stronger one than her. I spoke a moment ago how well supported this arc is, with multiple stimuli for change, conflict that challenges Lae'zel's core characteristics, and putting problems in front of her that force her to change, along with how romancing her enriches the concept of Lae'zel becoming a person that feels more. Who she is at the start, compared to the end of the game, is completely night and day. A character like Shadowheart, for example, either as a Dark Justiciar or Selûnite, is different, since she has her memory back and has committed to this path in her life. Professor Gale is another great example for someone that has a really great arc. For Gale, since he abandons, for once, grand ambition for inner peace, he too does go under a change. Ascendant Astarion, I shouldn't have to say how different he is. Those are great examples of positive or negative arcs occurring, but what about people like Karlach or Halsin or Minthara, or even Will, who don't really have an arc at all? They don't change, and their stories don't really take us down a path where they are challenged and grow from their conflicts, trauma, or goals. In my opinion, the same can also be said about their romances, with a caveat for Minthara, who does actually change due to Tav saving her and loving her, but in my opinion, that romance had so much wasted potential, and what we got was ultimately half-baked. And if we need to, we can look at Lae'zel's romance scenes as well. Each one has a real meaning to them, but also, all three of them together are very structurally sound and complement one another very well. Act 1's romance is purely physical, and Lae'zel will make that abundantly clear. But something lingers, and she doesn't know what it is. It's a classic writing angle of the hookup that turns two people into lovers. The connection you have with Lae'zel, if you choose to romance her, is a rough one to say the least, but it does inevitably build to something larger. You are with her for some of the lowest moments in her life, and she sees that, and she reaches out to you in Act 2's romance, but at that time, she can't understand why she's reaching out to you. She reaches the conclusion that she must be attracted to the physical prowess that you possess, that if she can simply defeat you in combat, you'll fade away, just like everything else she's ever known. But when the fight is over, you're still there, and she has found herself caring for you. Again, she doesn't know why she cares for someone. She doesn't know what any of this means. Her life has never been more confusing than now. Into Act 3, it's all about her finding out what her newfound freedom and this feeling of love means to her. And she finds that with you on that rooftop, watching that sun, seeing those colors, seeing you, as she names you the source of her joy, which is a feeling that we didn't think Lae'zel could feel outside of possibly killing someone when we first met her. I mean, that's fantastic stuff. Again, some characters do have some awesome romance scenes. Gale's Act 3 scene, where we go to Waterdeep and then have space romance, is cool and very trippy. And Shadowheart's Act 1 romance is important, just because you get so few moments to literally hang out with your companions or romance, that being able to build your connection with your romance through simply getting to know them is appreciated. Even though with Shadowheart, all we really do is talk to her about what she likes and what we like, it's the simple stuff that makes this scene so much appreciated. But at the same time, there are some scenes that are just disappointing. For example, Shadowheart doesn't get a romance scene in Act 2. Karlach's Act 2 romance, for as big of an event as that is, the first time she's able to touch someone in 10 years, it ends rather quickly, and for me, it didn't really hit as emotionally as it could have. So, she has a solid story, a very transformative arc, an excellent romance with its own inner story written in that also ties into her arc and the main plot of the game by thematic association. This is why I said she's the best written character by far. She's fully complete. Now, you know what would be an even hotter take? If I said she was perfect. Hot take number 2. Lae'zel is a perfectly written... I'm joking. My actual second hot take is, origin runs are a letdown. Is this a hot take? Surely I'm not the only one that feels that playing as most of the origin characters isn't really anything new in the grand scheme of things, typically amounting to maybe an hour of extra content and maybe a few extra lines that actually change something in the game. The one exception to this statement is a Dark Urge run. The Dark Urge gets wrapped into the main events of the game, yes, but why does someone play as an origin character? Well, I imagine it would be to feel immersed. With the Dark Urge, the narrator has so much more unique commentary for them, and you get an actual storyline and cutscenes across the board during long rests. You also get a personal butler with, again, unique cutscenes. You get these unique Dark Urge conversation options that typically will lead to outcomes that you'd never see otherwise. For example, you can chop Gale's hand off and completely lose out on that companion for the rest of your run. And of course, you get a fantastic arc that either leads you to beating the Urge or, and in my opinion, the coolest origin ending by a country mile, if you accept the Urge, you rain chaos on Baldur's Gate, and get this amazing ending of you envisioning the entire world dead at your feet. Wow, are all the other origin characters like that, Grandpa? Nope. Perhaps I'm asking for too much here, but you don't really get a ton that, at least to me, justifies playing the game for 100 hours. Not that I need the justification to start another playthrough, because I've already started so many, but you get my point. To date, I've done a Will Origin playthrough, half a playthrough of an Astarion Origin run, and then, given the nature of my work here on YouTube, have researched plenty into the remaining Origin characters and what they get. Take my Will run as an example here. I expected to feel a sense of newfound respect for Will, to feel closer connected to his quests, to run into new NPCs, and much more. While I do think actually playing as Will makes his quests more personal for the player because, well, he is the player, I was pretty disappointed with the roleplay aspect and questline being exactly the same. The dialogue lines didn't lead to much of anything new, outside of his interaction with his father, where you can explain yourself to him, but that cutscene where Will uses his tadpole to show older Ravengard how he got into his pact plays out the exact same. You don't get any new NPCs either, no new cutscenes, no mechanics, no new items, nothing. Some of the other origins are a bit better in that cutscene department. For example, Shadowheart gets an extended cutscene in the Shadowfell if she rejected Shar, and we actually get to see her be punished by her goddess. Astarion has Nightmares of Khazador, but overall, I think these cutscenes are far and few between. 100 hours of gameplay should warrant more than 1 to 2 unique cutscenes. As mentioned, some characters don't get any, like Will or Karlach. I'd also mention mechanics as well. Some characters, like Gale or Astarion, have these built-in features that, if you're Tav, you have to navigate. For Gale, it's his orb. For Astarion, it's his hunger. I do like how with Gale, you get access to Tara, and do have to continue consuming artifacts to sate the orb's hunger. With Astarion, I really liked having to hide your vampirism from the party, but both of these mechanics, they don't really last that long, typically ending in Act 1, and then your gameplay is pretty much like everyone else's. Something that is enjoyable is, of course, the origin endings. It's here where you get access to exclusive endings that should feel unique. And, well, they kind of do, but as this hot take has mentioned, they also kind of don't. Again, take Astarion as an example. If you play as him and you don't ascend, you'll actually get a cutscene of him dancing through this cave before feeding on this random guy. I mean, it's something. For Gale, if you chose the Ascension to Godhood route, then you get to actually see his confrontation with Mystra. Well, not really the confrontation, just the stare down. But again, you get my point, it's something. And if you're Lae'zel and decide to choose Ascension, you get to see her go to Vlaakith, and this really creepy scene plays out where she no doubt gets consumed and turns into a Githyanki zombie. Those are super cool. And the key word is they're exclusive to the Origin endings. And of course, all of the evil endings are pretty cool and unique, as each character gets a pretty lengthy commentary and then some mini cutscene of them being evil. Like with Will, you get to see him become the next Gortash by ascending to Dukeship, or Karlach, who fixes her heart by, well, just ripping it out and keeping herself alive with the power of the Absolute. Yeah, no, this is easily the highlight of the Origin runs, don't get me wrong. But the problem is, these are locked behind only the evil endings, and at that, these endings come at the end of your playthrough. More to the point of the evil endings, if you choose more traditionally good endings, for nearly all of the characters, you just get them reminiscing about life atop the castle walls. I mean, what the heck? That's it? You of course do get some unique dialogue at the camp reunion, but it's not that different, as you're still catching up with everyone else. So as I said, there's some good and then there's a lot of disappointment. But by far, the thing that I think hurts the Origin runs the most is them not being voiced. Part of what makes these characters so amazing is how alive they all feel, and while I understand how truly hard it would have been to have 5 or 6 fully voiced Origin characters, I truly think if you're offering Origin runs, then you have to add that in. Without the characters being voiced, you don't feel that same energy. They just feel emptier. How cool would it have been if we got exclusive dialogue between Lae'zel and Astarion if they ended up in a romance? If during the God Gale ending, when he tries to usurp Mystra, we got an extended argument with Gale's voice, making that inevitable exes meeting after such a long time scene play out much more dramatic. I think that truly would have made the Origin runs special in their own way, fully worth putting in hundreds of hours for each character just to find every unique dialogue. Hell, just to have a fully voiced protagonist would have made it worth it. I know for the community, this specific point with the Origin runs is something a lot of people agree on, so it's not such a hot take of course, but to the point I made about Origin runs as a whole being a letdown, this for me is the largest portion of that. Losing the soul and voice of these characters sucks. No other way to put it. And my final hot take is something that I do hope comes to bite me in the butt later. Hot take number 3. The Baldur's Gate TV series will utterly tank. I know some folks out here will actually agree with this statement, but it really feels like the community is a bit split on how this TV show will go. There are those who remain hopeful, and then I think there's also those that remain a little bit skeptical. I would argue in a more centrist point of view for majority of the community, they might believe that this show is just going to be okay. But for me, I think this show will be absolutely terrible. For those who didn't know, a Baldur's Gate TV series was officially announced and will be spearheaded by Craig Mazin, the man who worked on The Last of Us TV series. And you know, for the first time I think on this channel, we actually get to talk about a world I am very much familiar with, which is the world of pre-production. I'll use some of that experience here to give my predictions some legs, because, like I said, I don't think this show will just be average. I truly think, if this show even gets made, it won't be what fans will like at all. Firstly, and most crucially here, ladies and gentlemen, is that Larian Studios has already told us they will not be getting involved. Not having the writing and development team as even consultants for this project means that attempting to capture the same aura and energy of the game will be nigh impossible. But perhaps HBO, the studio that will be handling production, can repeat its success with shows like Game of Thrones, and despite some fan backlash, the pioneering that The Last of Us set up for video game adaptations could at least partially be considered a success. But here is where my doubt creeps in. Despite Craig Mazin being an avid fan of the game and is a reported dungeon master for his own D&D campaigns, my fear is that this project will have too many cooks in the kitchen that ultimately don't understand this project. Wizards of the Coast, notoriously known for being hard to work with, as Larian themselves stated, since everything that Larian did had to fit into the lore and mechanics of D&D, is aboard this project. Wizards of the Coast will no doubt have that same very watchful eye on every script, character moment, and world setting that gets pitched in development. Coupled with this, Season 3 of The Last of Us is currently in production, which will take time away from not just Craig Mazin, but the executive producing team of Jacqueline Lesko and Cecil O'Connor, who both also worked on The Last of Us. Both of these people are the logistical strategists when it comes to pitching budgets and scheduling shooting for weeks on end. It's not uncommon, of course, that these kinds of people also do have several projects that they need to manage, but it does take away some of your brain power when you're working on 2 large TV shows. Not to mention, you have to split your energy across both of the projects. That's of course assuming that they will be working on both of the projects. I sure hope they don't. Now of course, that can be remedied with a bit of extra time, but when you work on such a large show with such a large company like HBO, time is of the essence. Strike while the anvil is hot, so to speak. Presuming perhaps that the preliminary pre-production schedules, maybe casting and scripts are done by early or mid-2028, that is a lot to ask for in roughly 2 years. Remember, as far as we know, a script hasn't even been made yet. As previously mentioned, you've got to create a totally unique story separate from the game that already exists, that also respects the rules of D&D, and delivers on the promise that fans will see the OG characters and the aftermath of the game itself. You're managing at minimum 3 threads here as you develop the story, which, let's be fully honest, is always the most important thing in storytelling because, of course it is. And to that point, in large studio-backed projects like these, oftentimes both studios, any investors, big-name directors, and company executives get some sort of say in how things go. Hence the fear of too many fingers in the pie or cooks in the kitchen. Everyone has an idea of what makes a story good, but what sometimes happens is that so many opinions and ideas get stuffed into a show that it gets to a point where things make no sense. In the executive side of TV and film, you're also looking heavier at particular demographics and sponsors. For example, perhaps a more narratively cohesive ending for Astarion is him rejecting Ascension so that he can have that moment of growth, where he lets go of his desire for power and he ends up becoming, let's say, I don't know, that leader of the vampire spawn in the Underdark, which is an ending for him, and a good one at that. HBO and friends might look at his fan base, however, and notice a few anomalies with Astarion. They might notice that he's not only a fan favorite, but highly sexualized, and they might opt to write him in more into the main cast, maybe even including a romance scene, perhaps even having him be a vampire ascendant because that's cooler. But they don't want him to be a douchebag like how he is in the games, so maybe they rewrite his personality for him to be the Ascendant Astarion with Spawn Astarion's personality, which wouldn't make any sense, but who cares, right? The audience will love him and so forth and so on. At least that's what the executives would think. But the executives are not writers. So am I making any sense on this point? You can look at Game of Thrones as an example here, a show that was made by HBO. I loved that show and am currently reading through the books. The seamless weaving in between character POVs and the way so many plot lines get built up before crossing over one another and crashing into another is amazing. But the books aren't finished, and when Game of Thrones reached season 6, 7, and 8, the showrunners and writers did not have any material to go off of. So, for the first time, they had to write a fully unique story, and with that, give the characters a brand new voice. Of course, they tried to replicate the same voice, the dialogue, and the plot lines, but it's very clear that the audience felt how off things felt with characters making completely out-of-character choices, and plot lines like the final war in King's Landing feeling poorly planned. There is a reason Season 7 and 8 are thought of so poorly. My fear is that they won't be able to replicate that feeling that Baldur's Gate 3 gave us, of comfort, adventure, of the pure goofiness of trying new things, the fear of finding scarier things. More than anything, I fear due to the scale and how many parties are currently involved, if the project does actually get greenlit for production, I worry it'll be convoluted, and this show will not be received well by the fans of this game or fans of D&D. Again, let's hope I'm wrong, because I really want this show to do well. And with that, those are some of my hot takes of Baldur's Gate 3. Honestly, this was kind of a hard list to come up with. I feel like the controversial takes that I had have either already been done, see my Karlach Analysis or Will Analysis videos for reference, or the takes that I had weren't that controversial, such as the Netherbrain being a final bad boss, or that Act 3 is a mess. I think most of the community agrees on those points already. Yet, I hope the ones I provided here made your blood boil just a bit. Truly folks, once more, thank you all very much for 5,000 subscribers. July has been an extremely busy time in my life outside of YouTube, and will continue to be busy up until probably August. I can't exactly share why just yet, but I'm excited to reveal some very cool stuff in the next few weeks. As always, YouTube has been my creative outlet, and the growth we've had on the channel in what amounts to 3 months is pretty ridiculous. So again, thank you all very much. The next 3 videos coming out are going to be, of course, this one, followed by the Emperor Analysis, the Wrex Analysis, and the long-awaited Karlach Rewritten, or as I'm calling it, Karlach the Movie, which is taking me forever to finish. I appreciate all of the patience, so continue to hang in there. With that, folks, I do hope you enjoyed. Thank you all very much for putting me where I am, and until next I see you, be well, be safe, and enjoy life. Goodbye for now.